Alright guys, today we're looking at Zack films. He's pretty popular. He's got 27 million. Okay. Let's look at his latest shot.
A thin tattoo is pressed onto your throat, and once it sticks, the patch listens to every vibration from your voice box beneath the skin. Inside is a microphone and a wireless transceiver that sends your voice straight to your phone, making it clearer even in noisy places. But the tattoo could also sense skin resistance, picking up signs of stress, meaning it could detect when you're lying. And if that information was ever used against you, this tattoo could expose your secrets. Thankfully, it never moved beyond the patent stage, but it does make you wonder what's coming. When an acorn falls off an oak tree, a squirrel will grab it and run away. Now, some are sweet, so the squirrel eats those right away, but others have a chemical inside that makes them taste.
I didn't know that acorns can be sweet or bitter. I thought it's just like normal.
Bitter. So the squirrel will bury those for later. But they bury thousands of these bitter acorns every year, and they don't remember all of them. Meaning, months later, the forgotten acorns start growing, spreading oak trees to new places, and starting the process all over again. When an acorn at noon, sunlight will travel down a shaft in the mountain until it lands on a metal wire. The sunlight will heat it, and the metal will slightly change shape. That tiny movement will nudge the clock's gears forward, keeping it aligned with the sun. At the same time, a massive pendulum will swing inside, driving gears that track time. So once a year, a small hand will move one space. After 100 years, the century hand will move. And every 1,000 years, the clock will display the new millennium. Now, the clock is still under construction, but when finished, it's designed to run for the next 10,000 years. Hold the key over a lighter until it turns black with soot. Then press a piece of tape onto the side. Peel it off and stick it onto a plastic card, transferring the shape onto the surface. Next, carefully cut it out and hold the keys together, trimming away any bumps or gaps until you get an exact copy of the key. He cut the laptop in half with a saw, then the phone, the TV, and even an entire...
What? Bro, who could even buy a house with all that money, bro?
Car. You see, he was getting divorced, and his wife was supposed to get half of everything. So he sent half of each item to her and put his halves up on eBay. Now, the story went viral, and he ended up raising 2,000 euros from the listings. But a group of lawyers actually made the whole thing up as a prank. You see, they wanted to convince couples to make legal agreements before getting married by showing how messy a divorce could actually be. He cut the laptop. He was found alone on an island, the last tortoise of his entire species. Scientists brought him to safety because if he died, his entire species would vanish with him. So they brought in females from closely related species, hoping he could still pass on his genes. They waited for eggs, and some were laid, but none ever hatched, meaning there was no way to save the species. So thousands of people visited him since he was the last one. Then, one morning, decades after he had been found, his caretaker found him motionless. And with him, his entire species disappeared forever. He was found alone on an island.
Let's look at the oldest shot he ever made. And then we'll look at the most popular.
This is $60,000.
Okay.
Let's pretend this equals Jeff Bezos' net worth of $186 billion. This is what Oprah's net worth would look like, $850. Gary Vee would have a whopping $50.
And I'll have one penny.
Mr. Beast is pocket change, coming in at around $18. A millionaire would have about 33 cents. and the average net worth of a 35-year-old would be one single penny.
Yeah, no.
This is $60,000. This is Buc-ee's. It's the largest gas station in the world. It was started back in the 80s by a guy named Beaver. I kid you not. He started this gas station south of... This is Buc...
Okay, let's look at the most popular song ever made. What's this?
When you get stitches, a doctor threads a needle through your wound and pulls it tight to close the skin. As the stitches hold the edges together, the wound becomes inflamed as new cells begin to repair the tissue. Afterwards, connective tissues and collagen start to create skin. Then, blood vessels form to nourish these developing tissues, filling in the area. And over a few weeks, the wound will have healed together and the stitches are removed. If you get a splinter, most people just go ahead and pull them out. But sometimes they get lodged so deep in... Have you ever noticed how odd the McFlurry spoon is? Well, some people think it's supposed to work like a straw, but you only have to try that once to realize it does not work. The true reason for these weird spoons is actually pretty genius. You see, McDonald's didn't want to clean their beaters after every McFlurry, so instead, they designed a spoon that would also work as the mixer. Have you ever noticed how odd If you shot a bullet at ancient armor, some people think it could actually stop the impact. But armor like chainmail was designed to block slashing swords. And plate armor was even better at deflecting strikes, by spreading the blunt force across more area, lessening its impact. But these materials weren't very good at stopping arrows, which had enough energy to enter the armor. So a bullet would have no trouble going right through.
Yep.
If you somehow removed all of the blood vessels in your body and tied them together, you might think it would be about this long. But the human body has thousands of these tiny vessels that weave in and out of every body part. And with all of them combined, if you started in New York, your blood vessels would make it all the way to the Grand Canyon. It would go on to reach all the way across the Pacific Ocean, over Japan, Asia, and all of Europe. And not only would it make it all the way back to your starting point, but it would be able to make this trip 2 to 4 times over. If you somehow, when a doctor gives you a shot, they can sometimes accidentally push the needle all the way through your vein, which ends up puncturing both sides. Once the needle is removed, it leaves 2 holes in the vein. And before the body can thicken the blood and seal these holes, If everyone on Earth clipped their toenails and threw them into the ocean, you might think they'd float and blanket a huge area. But toenails don't actually float, so they would pile up at the bottom of the ocean. As over 82 billion clippings rain down, it would choke fish and smother the seafloor until a massive pile broke through the surface. And after this global clipping, you would have a walkable toenail island, 10 times bigger than Central Park. If everyone on Earth clipped their toenail...
Oh, vicious. Okay, let's look at this. Okay, hidden edge.
She found an air tag in her purse and began to freak out. Her mind started racing about who could have slipped it in and why they were tracking her. In a panic, she called Alex, one of her closest friends. He arrived minutes later and assured her everything was fine, quickly taking the device off her hands. He Googled how to destroy it and learned a hammer was the best option. They both went out on the porch and he crushed the air tag, which put her mind at ease for now.
No.
She found it.
Let's look at part 2.
He smashed the air tag and she felt relieved for a moment. But the worry lingered. Someone had slipped it in her purse. Someone was watching. Alex offered for her to spend the night at his place, and she agreed. She didn't want to be alone. His apartment felt unfamiliar, but safer than her own. He tossed her a blanket for the couch and disappeared into his room. She couldn't sleep. Every creak and noise made her skin crawl. She got up to use the bathroom, but as she walked down the hall, she noticed a room with a glowing red light bleeding from under the door. She pushed it open and her stomach dropped. It was her, an entire wall of photos. She found a strand of her hair taped to a mirror.
What?
A mannequin was wearing a dress that she had lost months ago. There was a wig for every hair color she had worn over the past few years. She gasped as she noticed the neatly organized air tags. The one labeled purse was missing. She stumbled backwards in disbelief, but as she turned to leave the room,
I never lose track of what is mine.
She woke up in a chair, the ties cutting into her wrists. Her head throbbed as she looked around and remembered where she was. The door creaked open. Alex stepped in, holding a glass. He looked unconcerned, like everything was fine. He carefully tipped the water into her mouth, watching her closely. His expression shifted to something darker, more troubled. As he left, she knew she had to escape or something bad would happen. She tugged and twisted at the ties, desperate to loosen them before he returned. Meanwhile, Alex was fixating on a sharp knife resting on the countertop. His hands hovered over it, a conflicted look on his face. Finally, he picked it up with a heavy sigh, gripping it tightly. Alex returned slowly, knife shaking in his grip, tears welling in his eyes. As he placed a hand on her shoulder, something felt wrong. It was the mannequin. Suddenly, she smashed the mirror over his head. She raced toward her car, fingers trembling as she
Wait, is there an attic in his car? In her car? I know
struggled to dial 911. As she drove away, he stood in the doorway with an unsettling smile on his face. She sped away, finally escaping Alex, which put her mind at ease for now. She woke up in a chair. The time.
So get more of the fictions. Just check.
He woke up to banging coming from downstairs. The clock read 3:34 a.m. He checked his parents' room, empty. He went downstairs, but as he reached the living room, he saw men stealing the TV. Terrified, he ran upstairs and locked his door. Then the banging started. He woke up, believing it was a dream, but the clock still read 3:34 a.m. Scared, he went downstairs to reassure himself, but the men were in the kitchen, yelling at his parents. He ran back upstairs just as the banging started. He woke up again. It was 3:34 a.m. This time, he stayed awake for 36 hours, haunted by the endless loop. He woke up to banging coming from downstairs. He smashed the AirTag, and she woke up he watched the masked man grabbing and dragging his own lifeless body across the floor. You see, he had acquired this special security camera that let him see into the future. Curious, he set it up, eager to test its abilities. But as soon as he turned on the live view, his stomach dropped. He slammed the laptop shut. His hands were shaking. That was him, dead. He took a deep breath and forced himself to watch it again, over and over. Every time, the masked man grabbed and pulled his dead body across the floor. He scoured the internet, searching for the mask. Nothing matched. He double-checked his locks and installed more. For days, he barely slept. Every sound sent a jolt through his chest. Then, one night, a sharp crack echoed through the house. He froze. It was footsteps. He grabbed the knife and crept downstairs. In the dim light, he saw him, the masked man, holding a knife, stepping into the living room. He lunged. The struggle was quick and violent. The knife drove deep again and again until the body collapsed. He gasped for air, hands trembling. Slowly, he reached down and peeled away the mask. His own face stared back at him. His stomach turned, his vision blurred. A knock at the door. Panic surged through him. He grabbed the mask, pulling it over his own face, and without thinking, he grabbed the body and began to drag it out of the room. He watched the masked man grabbing, and as he tucked his daughter in, they set up a baby monitor. As he watched the
comments. No worries. Start another thing. Live fictions for today. Videos. Ohio 1986 balloon disaster. Okay.
The United in 1986, 1.5 million.
Wait. Alright, we are back. Let's look at this course. We got the dinosaur video wrong. Okay, then we got the ship video wrong. Okay. What is it? Okay, never mind. What? Okay, what is this? Oh, can watch? Hello? Zack films? I'll just touch Yabo. Ship video. Zack films. This one.
Have you ever wondered why chip bags have so much air in them? Well, some people think it's a trick to make it seem like there are more chips inside.
Not. It's not this. This one?
He grabbed a potato wedge and sent it back, claiming it wasn't thin enough. The chef was...
Okay. Alright. Do confront. Okay, let's do the dinosaur video. Dinosaur. Okay.
He crawled inside the dinosaur statue, but as he did, he slipped, falling head first into its leg. He struggled to get out, but he was stuck upside down, and he slowly suffocated inside. It was only 2 days later that people noticed a bad smell, and when they peeked through a crack, they saw the man's dead body. Rescuers had to cut the leg open to pull him out, but no one knows for sure why he was in there. He crawled inside the dinosaur statue. In 1986, 1.5 million balloons were released in downtown Cleveland.
Cleveland has now broken the Guinness Book of World Records and released over 1 million.
This was meant to be a charity fundraiser and a way to put the growing city of Cleveland on the map. But instead of being remembered as an impressive spectacle, it would go down in history as a fatal disaster. The event was called Balloon Fest, and it was Cleveland's way of trying to rebrand. You see, at the time, they had a pretty rough reputation, which was exemplified by its well-known nickname. City leaders wanted to prove that Cleveland wasn't a mistake, and that it was well on its way to becoming a world-class city. The previous year, Disneyland had claimed the Guinness World Record for the biggest simultaneous balloon launch. And for some reason, the city leaders thought that outdoing Disneyland was the perfect way to start cleaning up Cleveland's image. Soon after, the United Way of Cleveland developed their ambitious plan to launch nearly 1,500,000 balloons over the city. The event required 6 months of planning, including the construction of a net the size of a city block. It took thousands of volunteers hours to fill the balloons. And finally, on September 27th, 1986, the day of Balloon Fest arrived. As these final preparations were underway in downtown Cleveland, a very different story was unfolding just to the east on Lake Erie. The previous night, a severe storm had rolled through the area.
Do want to remind everybody in part of Ohio, we continue with that severe thunderstorm watch until 1 a.m.
And about an hour before the storm, 2 men had gone out fishing. On the morning of the 27th, the day of Balloon Fest, the 2 men were reported missing by their families. Their boat was found abandoned on the lake, and authorities suspected that the men had fallen overboard because of the weather. The Coast Guard immediately began a search and rescue operation. Meanwhile, in Cleveland's public square, over 100,000 people had gathered to witness the balloon launch. The organizers were pleased that last night's storm had cleared in time for the event to go forward. But as the day wore on, the weather once again took a turn for the worse. A major rainstorm was closing in, but the balloons were already filled and ready to go. Rescheduling at this point would be near impossible. So instead, they released the balloons ahead of schedule.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Make it away, lift off.
And the band is up. There they go, John.
The Guinness Book of World Records has just been broken in Cleveland. Over 1,500,000 balloons.
There was no doubt about it. The launch was spectacular.
We did it!
It was a tremendous moment of triumph for the city of Cleveland. But unfortunately, this moment of triumph did not last long. The expectation was that the helium-filled balloons would float around for a while before eventually deflating and returning to Earth one by one. But that wasn't what happened.
And the wind has just shifted just enough that the balloons are now trailing fast.
This is beautiful. The balloons are coming back this way.
They're coming back.
The cold air and oncoming rain immediately pushed the still inflated balloons, tens of thousands of them, back down towards the ground in droves. The result was mass chaos.
Balloons, 1.5 million of them, caused quite a stir in Cleveland yesterday. It was part
A
of a
northerly wind quickly carried the balloons to Burke Lakefront Airport, and within minutes, the runways were so clogged that all flights had to be suspended. The balloons also started to descend on certain streets, and after a number of car accidents, these roads had to be closed until a bulldozer arrived to clear out the balloons. As all this was going on, the Coast Guard was still out looking for the 2 missing fishermen.
Ironically, that big balloon launch in Cleveland today is one of the things that's making this search so tough for the Coast Guard.
Balloons had descended on Lake Erie in massive quantities.
There's 60% of the balloons launched landed here instead of the planned 10%.
It's like trying to find a needle in a haystack here.
Can you imagine trying to find somebody floating out here or even spotting a life jacket with all these balloons on the water?
On September 29th, 2 days after the balloons were launched, the Coast Guard finally called off the search for the 2 missing fishermen. And shortly after, both men's bodies washed ashore. Balloon Fest was featured in the 1988 edition of the Guinness Book of World Records. However, that was the only edition to include it. And shortly after, Guinness ended the category of balloon launching altogether.
What's the disaster, bro? In the first intro, we saw the building almost collapsing. What? Or what? So that's the end of our video. I hope you guys love it, and bye.